Hi, hello everyone. I'm really hoping it's working. Um, Hi, so good to see everyone. If you guys are here, please put your name and location in the chat because it'd be lovely to know that I'm not just here by myself staring at the screen. And yeah, so I want to welcome all of you to Protecting Gaia's Oasis Global Summit. And here we are. We're going to gather for powerful conversations with diverse and visionary collective of speakers who will guide us to receive from Gaia's wisdom well and to renew ourselves in her healing waters so that we may align towards collective evolution with our planet. Um, Now I have been. Oh, hi. Hi, Judy. Oh, thank you guys for putting your name and location. Hello, Anne from Virginia. Thank you so much. It's nice to know that I'm not here by myself looking and talking. It's actually the first YouTube live I've ever done. So thank you, Francesca. Oh, from Italy. How wonderful. Um, yeah, so good to see everyone. And I have been waiting and planning for this summit for months now, and it has come together finally. And I can't wait to share the wisdom of so many speakers with you about Gaia. So, this is the first presentation to start off this global summit. My name is Maya Zaharov, and I'm your host and producer of this event. And I want to welcome all of you and to invite you into this special time and space, and to thank you so much for taking time to be here with us. And as a host and a producer of this event, I had the honor and unique privilege to interview all of the luminaries you're about to hear from. And of course, if you chose to be here, then you are here because you deeply love our planet just like me. And you're here because you recognize the need to individually and collectively align toward collective evolution with our planet. So I am, hello, Keiko from Canada. I'm getting the email that the link has failed. Well, I hope people will find their way to be here with us anyway, because I've sent 2 emails. So, Protecting Gaia's Oasis has been designed to share the wisdom of all the spectacularly brilliant speakers who will guide you on the path and provide inspiration for ways that we can begin aligning toward a collective evolution with our planet. And the people who I have invited to speak, this event, they know how to amplify the energy of healing, of love, oneness, and unity, which is vital during these initiatory times. And of course, I want to acknowledge the current situation of our rapidly changing world. It is now April 18th, 2022, and the war between Russia and Ukraine has been going on for nearly 3 months. At the end of this week will be 3 months. And the times and circumstances on our planet are intensifying with every passing day. And what is interesting is when I did my last summit on May 4th, 2020, it seemed like that time would be the most challenging time to be present on Earth. With the global pandemic then unfolding and the nearly global quarantine freshly in place. So here we are nearly 2 years later, and things in the world, or the global mood, so to speak, did not light up. In fact, it seems it's intensifying and unraveling by the day. And we are witnessing an unprecedented scale of global distress of life, earth destruction and degradation, but also a rise in consciousness in the rights of nature, in human rights and justice. And particularly now, is the time when Easter was celebrated by the Catholic Church just yesterday, and the Russian Orthodox Church will celebrate Easter this coming Sunday. So, Easter is a time to celebrate new beginnings. It is the symbolization and the unity of the masculine and feminine ways of being, because the date of Easter holiday comes from the ancient pagan tradition of tracking the lunar cycles, the new and the moon with the solar year, because the equinox is based on the sun's movements. So the I think Catholic Easter has been chosen after the equinox. So watching the Sunday after the first full moon. So that was yesterday. And of course, so the feminine being the moon and the masculine being the sun. And of course, some cultures have it reversed. And it really doesn't matter which is which, but the point is that there's a balance of feminine and masculine, and that balance brings life forth and creates new beginnings. And of course, Easter is mainly the celebration of the miracle of Christ's resurrection and the brand new way of life and renewal of life force. So I have a friend and mentor, Jocelyn Starfeather, who goes deep into that. You can check out her work at wearesacredplanet.com. But the point is, it's a truly magical time of the year to celebrate life. And my hope and prayer that this summit will bring you some solace and inspiration and a way forward in this wonderfully challenging time. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what called me to create this summit. Just reading the chat for a second. Thank you so much for putting your name and location. Eliza from Norway. It's really wonderful to see what a global audience we have. That is amazing. Wonderful. So I grew up by the Black Sea in Odessa, Ukraine. And Odessa and the Black Sea had a huge role, of course, in influencing my childhood and upbringing. I remember as a child of maybe 10, 11 years old when my dad told me that when he was young, the fish in the sea were so much bigger and the life in the sea was so much more abundant. And I remember being so kind of naively shocked by it and then thinking, oh, well, we must reverse it. I mean, that cannot be happening. Like, what is going to happen if I have children and things are just becoming worse and worse? So that led me to move to the United States, where I ended up majoring in environmental science and have worked as an environmental consultant for nearly 2 decades. So, throughout the course of my career, I mean, I've seen and walked thousands of miles, seen for such a variety of landscapes in the US. And with time, I became disillusioned with environmental consulting and our environmental policies as a whole, because while they do exist and are implemented, it just seems like they weren't sufficient and they didn't quite protect the public health, and of course they didn't protect the earth, because the widespread environmental degradation throughout us and in the world is happening. So I felt called to create the summit because, like many of us, I have been fascinated by the breathtaking infinite beauty of our planet, and it has captivated me. And this was also the reason why I wanted to become an ecologist, was to help restore the earth. But um, it wasn't enough, because working as a consultant, I found being constrained by the local and federal environmental laws, which did not prevent environmental degradation in the way it should have been prevented. And I saw the wide spectrum of degradation and how it differs from state to state or even to county. And as a whole, I didn't think policy transferred well into the practical side of things. And as a result, I saw beautiful parcels of land being developed, with mitigation rarely making up for the destruction. Not because environmental consultants or our clients cut any corners, just because ultimately the laws and regulations were written for allowable harm. Let me repeat that, for allowable harm. So they didn't prevent environmental degradation as a whole. And in the meantime, globally, environmental degradation and disasters are increasing and worsening every year. And it occurred to me as I was walking the land that the reason for that was because we had a discontinued, or we weren't connected to our planet on a personal basis. So it's our discontinued state from our planet on the personal level that needs to be reestablished, and we need to foster our personal connection to her and find our way back to relating to her, a way to develop a relationship with her. And I think as a society, we need to develop our own, preferably daily practices of relating to our planet. And it is from this place of connection to Her Majesty, Mother Earth, that we can take aligned action in this real physical world. We need to stand up and speak up for her rights and our human rights, because obviously they are related and pretty much the same. And as some said, think globally, act locally. And we have environmental problems. All of us have environmental problems close to home. So I, for instance, live in North Florida, home to the most concentrated area of artesian springs in the world. And our springs, these springs have been steadily degrading in quality and quantity, and some have stopped flowing altogether, and many have reduced velocity and flow. So there are many problems plaguing our springs, like water overuse, non-point source pollution, like agriculture. Oh, and yes, of course, we have our own water bottling plant, Nestle, right here, bottling up our spring water and selling it back to us and the whole world in a plastic bottle. So they recently, was it a year ago already, or a year and a half, received a new permit renewal for another 20 years against the wishes of the local citizenry. So there's an organization called Florida Springs Council. It's a local organization here in Florida, and it sponsors a lawsuit against Nestle's permit. So a portion of the proceeds from this summit, from protecting Gaia's Oasis lifetime access, will be donated to the Florida Springs Council. And I've also included a link on Sarah Younger's speaker page, so you can make a direct donation to the Florida Springs Council on her page. And Sarah Younger is a local activist who poured her time and energy tirelessly toward saving Florida Springs. So be sure to watch Sarah's as Mother Earth's interview on April 22nd to learn more. And she's also working for the local Sierra Club chapter. And the website on this, the photographs on the websites of the springs and the manatees and the fish, the photos of a local gem of a photographer, John Moran, and I have included his information on the event schedule page also. So prepare to be stunned by the beauty of his photos when you check out more of his work. So I was moved to create this summit to bring attention to our planet globally and to show and shine some light on the plight of the Florida Springs locally. So when I was already in the midst of creating this summit, the war in my home country, my birthplace, Ukraine, had started. And being a native of Ukraine, it hurts me deeply to see the land and the people who are dear to my heart and soul suffer. So I will also be collecting and donating a portion of the proceeds of the sale of the lifetime access to the people of Ukraine. Of course, moreover, as a Ukrainian woman with a Russian heritage, my mom is a native of Siberia, Russia, and all her family is Russian. So naturally, growing up in the former USSR and traveling all over Russia and Ukraine, growing up, never would I ever imagine a horrific scenario which is unfolding right now. And the world events are deeply affecting me on every level of my being. So In the midst of creating this summit, when the war broke out, so many of my well meaning friends, acquaintances, old classmates, and even family members wanted to share the news and latest events of what happened with me. And some wanted to hear my opinion to get clarity on what's happening. And while I do appreciate it, protecting Gaia's Oasis took on a whole new meaning for me. I had to learn to protect my inner oasis like never before. My energy levels and emotional well being, I had to protect them so they don't get sapped, so I don't get sapped emotionally, and my energy level remains, so I don't get sucked into the news stream and the opinions of others. Otherwise, honestly, I wouldn't be able to finish putting the summit together. So, how do you protect your Gaia's oasis as a whole? How do you connect with your own piece of the earth, which is your body, and how do you protect it? Uh, it's a variety of things as you find out more and as you listen to different interviews. But it what foods you choose to feed your body, what information and emotion you allow in, what energetic vibration, how much of it do you allow in? And these are the questions I had to find quick answers for with trial and error in this past 2.5 months. So, how much I let in and transmute within me before becoming numb or feeling helpless and changing my emotional state, all of that I had to grapple with, and I'm still dealing with that as unfortunately, as the Russian forces attack more different cities. Um, yeah, it's hard to see, and I'm hoping that my city will be spared, but who knows? So we do live and vibrate within a collective field of consciousness, within the Earth magnetic field. So, and this is the research and work of the Heartmath Institute, and Dr. Roland McCready of Heartmath will be speaking about it in greater details in just 2 hours. So you'll be able to find out more soon. Um, Basically, I had to be very diligent in what I was feeding the collective field and what I let into my world. And the point being, while I was working on Gaia's Oasis and envisioning Gaia's Oasis being the springs, in the outside world, I also had to learn a deeper lesson of her oasis within me and how to protect it. So in the process of different people reaching out to me and looking for answers to what was happening between Russia and Ukraine, I had such clear realization that I'm just tired of functioning in the paradigm of patriarchy and strict geographical borders. Like, I'm tired of responding to people's concern and curiosity within the only understanding of our society's framework of the military industrial complex, of a paradigm who's right and who's wrong and whose side of I'm on. So, of course, I could share more about the common and more recent history or more recent separate history of Russia and Ukraine. But what if I told you that I'm weary of dividing Mother Earth, Gaia's body, into borders and property? And just makes you wonder, what are her rights? Why have we not learned to share her vast resources in all this time? Or is it just the recent time? It's just the recent 5,000 years of recorded and patriarchal history? Because we know that human civilizations dates far, far back, and the temples and geological, archaeological discoveries, I think even in Egypt and Turkey, Göbekli Tepe, tell us that. So the realization that we grew up in the war culture and our societies are indoctrinated into this war culture, and the history of a country, it seems like in every historical time was measured by different wars and who was conquered by whom. At least that's how my understanding formed in history class. It almost seems like in when you learn a history of every country, every what discussed in is wars. Even our streets and squares and town centers are full of monuments of war. It's generals and conquerors slash liberators. It's rarely, if ever, have you ever seen a statue of a woman bringing life into this world? That's a preposterous idea, right? Even indecent. So this tells you what our culture celebrates. And it just makes me wonder, like, whose interests are playing out on the world stage with the intention on Ukraine now. Um, it just seems like the war industry itself is what drives war, and it's obvious who makes the profit and who bears the cost. Or is it obvious? I can't help it. The recent events made me question all I have been taught and naively believed growing up as a child. We're taught and told to look at the terrible invaders and to vilify them, like Hitler is a terrible person. It is so easy to point at any particular person and end the problem with them. It's like to fuel all the emotions and all the hatreds into one person. I'm not defending Hitler or Putin. Putin is a terrible dictator, but maybe things are not as simple to me as they once were in grade school. And there are things on the world stage not given much attention by the media. It's like, well, everyone was looking at Afghanistan. Seems like Taiwan was or is basically allowed to be conquered by China, and no one's saying anything. No one does anything. By no one, I mean like the superpowers, some entities that can do something. The superpowers are quiet, and I'm wondering, is it because US owes China how many billions of dollars now, or is it a trillion now? I don't know. So we were looking at Afghanistan. Taiwan got quietly taken over, and it's just like a magician wants to turn your attention to something insignificant while the trick is being performed. Makes you wonder, how did this happen? What are the largest, richest countries and powers to be up to? What deals are made under the table? Who sold Ukraine? Is it a magic trick? And what happened in Chechnya? Did Putin bomb civilian buildings where unsuspected people slept quietly to result in the wrath of the Russian public to justify later than to attack and level Chechnya to the ground? And then rebuild it nice and new with tall buildings and sell the apartments with interest rates and mortgages to new owners who lost their paid for and fully owned houses that they inherited from their parents. I mean, what's been happening in Syria for the last 9.5 years? Syria had mainly small family businesses, and land was held on by farmers and families working those small farms. People were connected to the land. And who was the civil war funded by? I don't know, the superpowers. Who's running the superpowers now? Is it corporations mainly? Just a few corporations, major media companies, or just one company? Power companies, the World Bank, the 1% elite? A slow bleed out by the superpowers. And the superpowers, I don't mean the countries. I'm not sure what the entity is, i.e., the few corporations. I mean, the slow bleed out of the Syrian average Syrian who lost the ownership of their way of life, small business ownership, home and farmland. What about the mystery of the Syrian refugee camp in the northwestern part of Syria, where about 1 million people now reside? Supposedly, some can see their villages from that camp, but there is no way back to their homes. Not the Russian forces, which are actually still a big presence in Syria now, not the Syrian regime forces, or not even the Turkish forces on the western border would let the Syrian people back to their land. Is it supposedly occupied by the rebel forces? That's why. What are they waiting for? A generational shift until the memory of living well upon the land is erased? And then it seems like they will not rest until they take the land and build new skyscrapers, maybe like the one in, I don't know, Dubai, or new subdivisions and offer 30-year mortgages with daily compounding interest rates like here in the developing world. Will Ukraine be slated for the same fate? Will the rest of the world, where people haven't lost their connection to the land? Maybe the jungle lands of the native people can be taken away without artillery and bombs, like burning the Amazon forest in Brazil and Borneo, just driven out by the corporations outright. Bigger countries like Syria and Ukraine have to be conquered and taken over a bit slower, and have the population tortured and tired of war and ready, really, when they have no choice but to agree to the life of indebtedness. Will they be indebted to corporations and have no freedom to connect and enjoy life, but to be in a continuous rat race to pay off loans like most of us here in the West? Yeah, Ukraine is a juicy morsel, both geostrategically and by the rich underground resources and the most fertile topsoil. And just wondering, how's Russia going to feed itself in the short term without the export of the food and grain from Ukraine? I'm just talking out loud here. It's These are the questions that are swirling in my mind, and obviously, I'm not a political analyst, and I don't have to be a Georgetown fellow to see that something is very wrong in the world, that we have been indoctrinated into the war culture. And look at what society values. How much of the tax dollars goes into the military worldwide, and especially here in the United States? It just seems like there's a kind of a secret mission to destabilize the world. I just wanted to mention Dr. Celia Elworthy, who's a champion of peace and dedicated her life to peaceful resolution of conflict. She talks about the budget for military and military slash defense. And so the 10%, just 10% of that budget could clothe, feed, and educate all of the people on this planet. So let that sink in for a minute, just 10%. And the myth of the need for war is perpetuated by the few who lobby the governments to buy the weapons. Even the smallest, poorest countries in Africa are approached to buy AK 47s. And my guess that if they don't readily buy, they're probably pushed into it or scared into it. So I just want to ask you to make sure you know where your money goes. If you have a pension plan, an investment plan, find out exactly where and what you are invested into. If any money goes into production or procurement of weapons, take it out and redistribute it into life sustaining environmental causes for our children's future. And there are profitable environmentally conscious investments. So there are many ways you can help our planet and yourself. So you can check out my YouTube video from the Voice of Mother Earth Summit. It's recorded on May 4th, 2020, and I'll provide a link below this video. And I talk in more detail in different ways that you can connect daily to our planet. I list about just 6 ways there, I think. But now there are almost 8 billion people on this planet, and every person can find their own way of connection in more way than one, and using different modalities. So if there's 8 billion peoples, there must be infinite ways to connect to our Mother Earth. So find yours. Find what sings to you. Find what lights you up. The gift of our planet to us is life. Mother Earth is teeming, thriving, and pulsing with life. We're born into this paradise to celebrate it, not to wage war. We live and breathe life. It's everywhere. I wonder what Gaia, what our Earth feels when our warfare rages on her sacred body. Her essence, landscapes, and beauty call towards love, not war. So we have to envision and strive toward a society that values peace. All right. And it is time to look within and behold the destiny for the world that is greater than anything the corporations or the corporate monopolies, more precisely, not just corporations, the oligarchs, the World Bank, and the weapon industry envision for us. We must create a world for ourselves and our children that is worth living in. All life is sacred, and we're held together by the web of life, interconnected and interdependent. The whole is greater than some of its parts. That's the natural world, and every single vibrating particle in it are connecting. This is the concept behind Ecology and Complex Systems by Howard T. Autumn. And the concept is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And he was a University of Florida professor, so you can check out his work on ecology, economics, and engineering. He understood deeply how interrelated and interconnected the world is, and he did explain it scientifically. So, ecosystems have the right to flourish and evolve and persist, and we humans are just part of these ecosystems. We cannot remove ourselves from it, we cannot exist without them. So, this concept is not new. It's obviously going back to most indigenous cultures, if not all, knew and understood this concept deeply. And this is why I wanted to read to you The Legend of the Eagle Dancer. And it's, you can find it on the website for sure. And I just want to read an excerpt from Arkham Lishwala's The Time of the Black Jaguar. It speaks to the times we find ourselves in now, the times which were prophesied by many indigenous peoples. Give me just a second here. In the beginning, there was only a point of light. The point of life fused its feminine and masculine energies and exploded, generating seven stars, Pleiades, I think. At once, these seven stars also fused their masculine and feminine energies and exploded, generating 13 creators of this world who manifested the existence of all beings through their singing and dancing. The 13th, conducting the dance, was the one who had manifested his duality intact within himself, the eagle dancer. To his left were six female dancers, to his right, six male dancers. They formed a circle, standing on top of the open space of nothingness, each one of them carrying a staff with which they banged on the floor of nothingness, calling it to become something. The first thing to appear to them was the tree that was an animal. While the dancers of creation continued their movements and songs, fruits began to appear in the branches of the tree, which are now all the animal species and all the plant species that reside on earth. One by one, they detached from the tree and found their place on the terrestrial space. And the dancers had called to solidify itself from nothingness. It is the way the world and its inhabitants were created. At the end, the dancers who sang the creation of the world decided to leave species on earth that had qualities similar to those of themselves. They created women and men and left them with the mission to care for the rest of creation through the power of their heart and their capacity to produce refined vibrations. The first humans were born to be guardians of the memory of this original design of life, guardians of the memory that resides in the song and dance of creation, keeping this memory alive in their heart and singing it back to all that lives became their gift, their mission, and the foundation of a beautiful way of life. Over time, the giant and powerful humans grew in numbers, enjoying the fruits of their intelligence and their creative capacities. They kept life in balance and made beautiful things with what Earth gave them. Some kept living in simple tribal ways, while others developed great civilizations that became containers of universal wisdom. When they were at the peak of their power, darkness showed up in the souls of many. And for the first time, humans knew emotions like jealousy, envy, and greed. Those trying to prove to be the most powerful and beautiful among the rest competed with each other, and in doing so, ended up wounded. A strange kind of pain related to the loss of unity with others, which came together with the loss of oneness, gave birth to fear. Defensive and aggressive behaviors born from fear made them close their hearts, disconnected from the radiant light of their spirits. They kept going further away from their original selves. With time, they forgot the origin and the way the eagle dancer encouraged them to sing in the beginning, becoming one. Those who had grown a hole in their souls had a craving to become the one, ignoring that the one is really the one heart that is born from cooperating with others. The original brotherhood of the humans got lost. Some nations developed strong ethnic identities that they used for stating that they were not like the rest, forbidding their young ones to marry an outsider. When the humans became divided, the rest of creation lost the continuation of its creator. Their violence made them hurt not only each other but the earth as well. The balance of life became debilitated to extent that the tree of life became ill and began to die. Its withering branches fell upon the earth, generating earthquakes, volcanoes, explosions, and flooding. This violent way of life continued until one day when some of them decided to climb to the top of the mountain to cry for help. They were the ones who, listening to the beatings of their own frightened hearts, remembered the staffs of the dancers of the beginning, banging and banging, calling life. On the mountain, their vision was healed, and they remembered themselves, being able to feel their hearts again. When they came down, they knew what to do. The dance and song of the beginning were once again offered to the tree of life, which was now a dying tree. Fallen branches were good for making drums that made the heartbeat of the tree of life resonate throughout the earth. The branches were also good for lighting the sacred fire that showed them the spirit of the tree. In front of the tree, they danced to the rhythm of the drum day and night, elevating their vibration higher and higher, in alignment with everything and the origin of all things. Remembering and healing themselves, they were able to reestablish the health and equilibrium of life on earth. So this is the story of the eagle dancer. And what I want to most leave you with is that we are a creative force of nature. So the story of the eagle dancer says at the end, the dancers who sang the creation of the world into being decided to leave a species on earth that had qualities similar to those of themselves. They created women and men and left them with the mission to care for the rest of creation through the power of their hearts and their capacity to produce refined vibrations. That is us. We have the capacity to produce refined vibrations in our hearts. We can get into heart coherence, into a loving and compassionate state. When in that state, we get resonant frequency with the earth magnetic fields. We can manage our emotions to align into the heart's unique wisdom. When two vibrations are the same frequency, they transfer information between each other. So, when in this coherent state, our hearts and brains are vibrating the same frequency as the earth. So, we can transfer energy and information between the fields of the earth. This is the scientific work of the Heartmath Institute. And the very next speaker, as I mentioned before, Dr. Roland McCrady's interview today will be at 12 p.m. New York time. So find out more. Also, I'll just read just a few a few paragraphs from the story again. When the humans became divided, the rest of creation lost the contributions of its caretakers. Their violence made them hurt not only each other but the earth as well. The balance of life became debilitated to the extent that the tree of life became ill and began to die. Its withering branches fell upon the earth, generating earthquakes, volcanic explosions, and flooding. Remember that in the story, the tree of life is an animal also. And these are the times we find ourselves in the midst of the sixth extinction, with the great beasts starving in front of our very eyes. So it's in these times, it is the most important to remember the original design of life, the very song and dance of creation, for keeping this memory alive in our hearts and singing it back to all that lives is our gift, our mission, and the foundation of the beautiful way of life. We can navigate these uncertain times together by helping one another and therefore raising ours and Earth's collective vibrations. And being in resonance with our planet is of the utmost importance right now because wars are outdated and we have to make them be so. Now, on the mountain, their vision was healed and they remembered themselves being able to feel their hearts again. When they came down, they knew what to do. The dance and song in the beginning were once again offered to the tree of life, which was now a dying tree. Fallen branches were good for making drums that made the heartbeat of life, tree of life, resonate throughout the earth. The branches were also good for lighting the sacred fire that showed them the spirit of the tree. In front of this tree, they danced to the rhythm of the drum day and night, elevating their vibration higher and higher in alignment with the beginning of the origin of all things, remembering and healing themselves. They were able to reestablish health and equilibrium of life on earth. Again, the story keeps stressing heart's wisdom, connection, and remembrance, and getting ourselves to the higher vibrational state by singing and dancing the song of creation. So, starting with the next speaker, you'll find out exactly how. And it only gets better as you'll hear more interviews and speakers. So, a deep bow of gratitude to all the expert speakers for sharing the bounty of their knowledge and their life's experience and the intimate details of how they relate to nature. And I'm humbled by their courage, bravery, and wisdom and the new ways of seeing and doing things. So enjoy their talks. And again, I wanted to mention, don't forget, we are raising funds for the Florida Springs Institute and the people of Ukraine, as you've seen from the emails. And if you don't want to purchase lifetime access, you can, there's a link for the Florida Springs Institute, and you can just send the money directly. So, again, thank you, everyone, and welcome to Protecting Gaia's Oasis. It is a privilege to be here with you, and thank you so much for being here, and thank you for putting your name and location in the chat. See you soon.